All right, good morning, everyone. And thank you for either coming in or zooming in this morning. I just want to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting today on the traditional unceded territories of the Comox First Nation and the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Area, includes the Coast Salish, Kwakwaka'wakw, and Nuu-chah-nulth territories. And the first order of business is adoption or approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion for that?
Move.
Okay, Grant and Moran, anyone opposed? Perfect, and that passes unanimously. And next is the adoption of minutes for January 11th. Okay, McCollum Mawhinney, anyone opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously as well. And next is the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Advisory Committee minutes.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Chapman, and I think it was Mawhinney. And anyone opposed to that? And that passed unanimously as well. And that takes us to the sort of larger items on the agenda, and we'll start off with the recommended financial plan. I'll just pass that over to our CAO. I'm sorry, can we let's get a motion for receipt on that, please. McCollum and Mawhinney again. Perfect, thanks.
Great, thanks, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the directors. Vivian Shaw, our Senior Manager of the CSWM Services, will be introducing this staff report, and it does introduce the recommended financial plan coming out of January's meeting where the proposed financial plan was considered, and Vivian has an update for the board on this report, and then we're available for any questions you might have. So Vivian, over to you.
Thank you, James. Through the CEO to the chair and the rest of the CSWM board, thank you. Good morning. As James mentioned, we had received obviously your feedback from the January 11th board meeting, and the two notable feedback and items that we heard was obviously the error in one of the expense items in the year 2028 operating budget for CSWM service, specifically relating to the operating contract for the Campbell River Transfer Station. And secondly, there were concerns raised by some of the directors around the low transfer reserves in our proposed financial plan. We understand the importance of maintaining this healthy reserve for our capital, future capital needs, and that overall financial stability. And to that end, we're committed to addressing these concerns and optimizing our reserve contributions to better support the longer term sustainability of our operations. And the budget that you have before you, the recommended budget, addresses the feedback as previously noted. The change has been corrected to the 2028 operating budget to align with our historical data and also ensuring the accuracy and consistency of our financial projections. We've also revised our support service expenses, resulting in a reduction from the proposed budget to $999,614 for support services. And this reduction has been reallocated as a contribution to the Capital Works Reserve. Diving into the surplus from the previous fiscal year, as of January 24th this year, the estimated surplus for 2023 stands at approximately $3 million. There were a number of contributing factors to the surplus, as noted on the slide here. Firstly, we saw higher than anticipated revenues from tipping fees, largely driven by the just waste volumes and the increase in scrap metal prices, as well as higher than expected EPR extended producer responsibility volumes from recycling, totaling just over $1 million. Our operating contracts and the maintenance costs also came in slightly lower than budgeted, resulting in a combined savings of $476,000. And then the third point, we had assumed a higher chemical spend for 2023, but with the delay in the commissioning of Cell 2 and a drier than normal season last year, it resulted in a lower chemical cost for the treatment of leachate, contributing to a savings of 148,000. And then on the organic side, our procurement process for the organics bin yielded savings that was a bit beyond our initial projections, resulting in additional savings of 223,000. So all of this totaling roughly about 1.9 million. And also in this, included in this $3 million surplus is the operating carry forward projects totaling 894,000. And the details of those are in page 3 of your report. Admittedly, we were a bit ambitious in our forecasting last year, and we were not able to realize some of these projects as a lot of our effort was really centered around the commissioning of the organics facility. And also, we were not ready to initiate some of the technical reviews that were associated with the solid waste management plan just yet. So based on our updated work plan for this year, we're committed to carrying forward, getting the carry forward projects completed and the bulk of the technical studies done as part of part 3 of the solid waste management plan in preparation for the public consultation in early 2025. Moving on to the capital projects that are planned for 2024, the total allocated budget for these projects total 2.2 million. There have been no changes to the capital projects that are outlined in from the proposed version that you saw back in January. The total budget comprised of carry forwards from 2023, again reflecting our commitment to completing the ongoing initiatives and also maintaining the continuity in our capital expenditure plans and asset management. Sorry, I tried to make this a bit bigger, but apologies. The tax requisition remains at 5 million. And based on the BC assessment, January 2024 revised assessment rolls, the estimated residential tax impact for 2024 is 0.125 per $1,000 of assessed value. This is the same table that you saw previously from January. This again represents a slight decrease from the previous year where this rate stood at 0.1038 per $1,000 of assessed value. And again, to provide clarity on the tax impact for property owners, the table to the left illustrates the estimated tax rate translated into dollar figures for the properties with median assessed values in each of the municipalities within the CSWM service. The asset management plan it serves as a strategic roadmap for our managing our infrastructure assets effectively and sustainably. Our asset management plan was originally developed in 2019 and outlines our asset reinvestments based on the existing infrastructure and projected requirements at that time. However, as we had mentioned, the installation of significant new infrastructure since then, such as the new cell 2 and the associated leachate pond, the Campbell River flare, the regional organics facility, as well as the organics transfer station, they all need to be updated, incorporated into the asset management plan. As noted previously, for 2024, our recommended budget now here includes the contribution to capital works for 2024. And this contribution here now aligns well with the estimates from the 2019 asset management plan. But however, despite meeting the reserve contributions for this year with surplus, it is important to note that future years are currently underfunded. And as staff, we acknowledge and share the sentiment of the director's comments from the proposed budget regarding the importance of updating our asset management plan to accurately reflect the evolving needs of our infrastructure. So looking ahead, we'll be updating our asset management plan in conjunction with our solid waste management plan renewal process. For 2024, but with the way that the surplus is played out, we have a bit of breathing room to wait until we have a clear understanding to ascertain future revenue needs, which allows us to make well-founded recommendations for revenues in subsequent years and to inform our future financial plans and ensuring that long-term sustainability of our CSWM operations. So in working with our our finance department, we've identified a number of financial strategies that we'll be incorporating into the solid waste management plan renewal. Number one being the critical aspect of our financial strategy is involving the review and development of financial policies that govern our revenue sources, fee structures, and budgetary processes. The evaluation of financial implications is also important as we look at the implications of the proposed initiatives that will be coming out of the solid waste management plan. This will include various factors like funding sources, fee structures, and budget requirements to assess the feasibility and impact of these initiatives. The development of the sustainable long-term financial plan really supports our operational needs and our capital investments. And this will take into account, again, our revenue projections, our expenditure forecasts, and reserve allocations to make sure that we can meet our financial obligations while meeting service level needs. Another key aspect of our financial strategy is the optimization of fee structures to balance revenues and expenditures. By aligning our fees with actual costs of the service delivery, we can ensure that our revenue streams remain sustainable over the long term. And then lastly, we will be identifying financial risk associated with solid waste management plan and developing strategies to mitigate those risks. So there are two options highlighted within the report. The first option here is to approve the 2024 to 2028 CSWM recommended financial plan as presented. This option involves accepting the recommended plan without additional updates at this time. The second option is to approve the plan with the additional updates. The second plan would look at implementing a gradual taxation and reserve contribution increases as noted on page 5 of the staff report. After careful consideration and alignment with the feedback received from the board from the January 11th board, where we presented the proposed budget, as well as balancing the feedback from the June roundtable session last year, our staff recommendation is to proceed with option 1, which is approving the plan as presented. This option acknowledges the feedback that's been provided and also ensures that the recommended plan addresses the concerns that's been raised by the board, which allows for further analysis and policy development for future adjustments. And that is it for me. Thank you so much, and I'll take your questions.
All right, so we're still on receipt, and I see comments by Director McCollum. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Unfortunately, I missed the first discussion on the budget from the previous month, and I know there was a table provided, projecting the reserve balances for the service going forward, and it sounds as though the numbers have been updated to reflect the unspent surplus, but they weren't included in the report. So if you could just let us know what the new reserve balance is based on the updated figures.
Lucy Wicharek, our Chief Financial Officer, may be able to have that number handy, I think, yeah. Lucy?
Through the chair, the reserve balances are the same as what they were when we presented on January 12th. In this proposed budget, we actually, the only reserve that we changed was the 2024. Yeah, so sorry. Yes, I'm contradicting myself. So yes, the 2024 figure has been increased, and that's the only change. So do you want us to quickly figure out the final balance to that, to provide that back to you? I'll just confirm what that is. And
Sure, like,
Get back to you.
where I'm wanting a bit of clarity is, yeah, how the improved surplus projection impacts the reserve, primarily the future capital works one. And then the other question I have related to that is that I didn't see in the projected revenues any line item for interest, but I would expect that there would be some interest associated with those reserves. So that's the second part of my question.
I can answer the second part. So through the chairs, for this particular operation, any interest attributed to it, we wouldn't be bringing any into operating. We'd apply it fully to the reserves. So when we're finished at year end, that whole total interest that we've earned on our investments would then be allocated out across all reserves, including this one. So it's directly funneled into the reserves.
So it's just the reserve balance basically changes when we do year end. Is that it?
Correct.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay. And if I can go back just quickly to your first question. So from the proposed budget to this budget, we have a change in that transfer to reserves. Sorry. So maybe I'll take a minute and I'll come back to that if that's okay. I know, just not to hold you up, we'll go and make sure we have the figure for you. Okay,
Great.
go ahead.
Thanks, Lucy. And I think we'll next go to Director Wally online.
Gerald, you're muted.
Wait, we can't hear you, although you don't appear to be muted. Director Wally, are you still there wanting to speak? Trying to log that. Okay, all right. Perhaps we'll go to Director Tyrion right now then.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. My questions concern the reserves as well. At the last meeting, we identified that in 2031, we'd be about $10 million short of what we'd need to do cell 3. I'm just wondering if that number has changed at all with this new budget in light of the larger reserve contribution that we've got this year. And I'm assuming that that larger reserve contribution comes from the surplus this year. And is this being new here, is this normal to have this large of a surplus each year, or is this an unusual situation?
I can speak to that latter half, and I can turn it over to Lucy to answer your first question. Our surplus is a bit higher than historical value, or sorry, what we've had historically. Going back to 2016, the average surplus is roughly around 2.3 million. There are a number of factors that contribute to those surplus, and generally it is we have roughly about 337 line items to our budget, and there are a number of variabilities that contribute to each of those, largely based on tonnages. It's contributed to the economic conditions as well. So we are going to be working diligently to try and close in on that surplus. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is making sure that those carry forward projects are much tighter for future years. But I'll turn it back over to Lucy Brown for the other question.
Okay. I can just add, so I'll add to address your first part of your question and also for Director McCullen to finish up. So in essence, the difference between the proposed budget and what you're seeing here on recommended, we did add more of the surplus in, and that's, as Vivian has mentioned, has created that greater contribution to reserves, which is $800,000. So that's basically the difference that has flown into your capital works reserves. It's a far way away from the $10 million that we needed. So in overall, by 2023, we're still at a place where we have a deficit. So we still don't have enough money for that cell 3, which leads in essence to that option number 2, where if we know that we need to do further work on that to get to a place where we are well situated for that next really large capital project that's coming in, and the option 2 just recognizes in this capital plan that gradual increases are most likely would be required if this board wants to gradually increase the revenue in order for us to be building better reserves going forward. What we've brought forward here in this recommended budget is just a small increase down that road.
And I guess just as a follow-up, a lot of these reserves or a lot of these surplus was from increased tipping fees, which I presume means increased use of the cells that we have. And that just accelerates the need for the new cell as we go along, if these increases keep running ahead of projections. Is that?
The surplus that we saw from 2023, there was a $5 increase that was implemented on January 1st. The tonnages were trending as expected based on the population increase. So we are currently in line with our projected bill rates. It's not that we're out of line, or sorry, out of step with the projections for volume at this time.
And if I may, one more follow-up. If we do the 3.5% increase in 25, 26, 27, with those numbers, what will the shortfall be in 2031 when comes time to do the new cell 3? So with the business as usual plan, it's around a $10 million deficit. If we start with these modest increases, do we have a number for what the deficit would be at that point?
Through the chair, I'll just take a minute just to get that figure in front of me of with that the 3.5 and the 2.5 structured additional dollars going into that reserve. I just don't have the total increase overall across those 3 years. So we've been making progress. I think if I'm remembering correctly, we've probably contributed across those 3 years another $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. So that's the progress that we've made towards that next big project. I know when we go through our next cycle of capital planning that we'll have to come back and be contemplating. It looks most likely that we're going to have to be drawing some debt for that. So it's going to be some combination of our reserves and our debt. And the better that we do in funneling away some cash in there, the better it'll be overall, since we won't have to contemplate as large of debt servicing interest on that debt as we go forward. Okay, so some progress, we'll need more, and I do absolutely foresee that we most likely will have to be drawing some debt for that project.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to add on to what, just add on to what Lucy was saying, option 2 on the screen and option 2 in the staff report, page 5 in the staff report, it really does get started towards that additional reserve contributions and moves us closer. And like Lucy said, there's going to have to be more work, and part of that will be through the solid waste plan. But I think we felt it really important to present to the board this option 2 that gets us closer towards that more of a fiscally healthy position than what is in option 1 and what was presented through the proposed financial plan. So option 2 is certainly there for board consideration and in part on the board discussion from last meeting.
Yeah. And personally, I would prefer to support option 2 and start looking at contributing to these reserves as we move along.
All right, thanks, Alternate Director Durian. It looks like Director Wally's made his way back online. Hopefully we can hear you this time, so please go ahead. There is a phone number. I think that was put up in the chat, so perhaps try giving us a call. Yeah, sorry about that. And we'll get to Director Wally as soon as he's able to communicate with us. Oh, he's picking up the phone. In the meantime, we'll go to Director McCollum in the room.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, my other questions are just around the tipping fees projections going forward. I guess my first question is looking ahead in the 5-year plan, are the tipping fees increases based on just volume or volume plus inflationary increase to the fee, or is there other planned increases beyond inflation that are included in that assumption? Yeah, just want to be clear what those figures include.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. The increases to the revenue right now is strictly just based on CPI increases. There are a number of layers that we need to contemplate without understanding the full complement of new programs and services that might arise from the solid waste management plan. We didn't want to get too far ahead. So it's strictly just based on our CPI increase projections at this time.
Okay, so no tonnage increase, but CPI is.
Oh, sorry, there is tonnage increases coupled with those, but nothing
beyond that. Okay, that's great. That's was my assumption as well. I just wanted to make sure I understood. The other question I had was just around the tipping fees and the projections for the organic service. Just looking between the actuals and the budget for 2023, it looks like we got about 35% more than what we anticipated. And I'm curious if the projections going forward were amended based on that kind of higher amount. I know we've had a partial year for 2023, and just would like to hear a bit about the confidence in the projected tonnage for organics.
Thank you for the question. It is, we were very conservative in our estimates for the organics. So we had originally estimated about 5,500 tons of material, of organics flowing through, not knowing what the uptake of the program will be, given that it was bringing on City of Courtenay and the City of Campbell River. So we were very conservative in that estimate. We're pleased to report and have a full report coming in March, detailing now that we have a full year of operation. For the full year of operation, we ended up arriving at just under 7,900 tons of organics that has been diverted from the landfill. So yeah, it was again a great success. And we are using that number to project forward for future years.
Great. Yeah, that's great news. The other question I had was that I didn't see any projected revenues for selling any of the finished material. And I know it's early days and maybe that's thinking about it conservatively, but we are planning on moving ahead with that in 2024. So yeah, if you could just give some information around that as well.
We're going to be projecting we will be starting selling hopefully within the next month. We've unfortunately did not pass the first two rounds of testing. It was lower pH, but it met all the other testing criterias. That we are going to be maintaining a fairly low, we're maintaining that $20 per yard rate. It should have been reflected within the recoveries component. But I will triple check to make sure that is in there.
I might have missed it.
Right, I'm not sure if, Lucy, do you want to make a comment there?
Sorry, if I can, Chair, if I have another piece of what I think might be useful piece of information for you from a reserve planning perspective. So in the option 2, and if we've put in here what the reserve contribution is, and with that option 2, which in essence, we go from 2025 at 845,000 and that we're transferring to reserve 1.3, almost 1.4, and then 1.8. In order to get to that place where we have that $10 million cell 3 project funded, we would need more in the realm of $2 million. So if you want to keep that in mind from the perspective of how much do we actually need in order to be there fully, and from the current perspective, from the current projection of that cost, that's what we would need. So by doing the increases along the way, I guess my second point in raising those fees a little bit every year, you get this compounding effect on it as well. So that was what else I wanted to draw to your attention.
Right, Lucy, thanks for those updated figures. And we're now going to try for a third time lucky to get Director Wally. I see you've got a phone in your hand. You might have to hit *6 to unmute. Look at you. I can see you hitting *6.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you for your patience. I have two items I'd like to bring up. Number one is, in past years when the budget was presented, it included all the line items. There are about 6 line items that are of particular interest to my area, and I have a question for staff if it would be possible in the future to revert back to include all those line items on the budget so I could look at them ahead of the meeting.
Right, does staff know the particular line items being referred to? And I can't see your light.
Sorry, I can speak to the C-word items. I can confirm that the transportation, the cleanup, and the garbage has all been included into the budget, and we can send that to you, those details to you after this meeting as well.
Yes, thank you very much for that. My question was, would it be possible in future years, or the next time the budget is presented, to put those in the report that you put in the agenda? It used to be that way in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for the question.
I think Lucy is going to respond to that, Director Wally.
Yeah, through
okay, and yes?
Yeah, direct.
My second item was that...
why don't we just get the answer to the first one maybe, and then we can move on to the second one. Thanks, Director Wally.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Wally, I understand to the in the past that when we prepared your packages for budget, that it did include all the line item details. And then there was a change to your financial policy where the information was rolled up to the individual types of expenditures that were there. If this board wants to, we can revert to the full information. It is a lot to digest, which why it's pretty typical to just bring up the information to the expense line. However, anytime you want any detail on any one particular line, we certainly can provide that. And if there are very specific requests for some of them, for some line items, we can include that, but maybe not all of it. It's totally up to the board what you want to include in your package. That's just one of the reasons why we made a change to that, because it's quite a bit and maybe not needed as you go through your decision making for the budgets.
All right, thanks. Director Wally,
I understand. Thank you for that. I was just thinking that for those who really don't want that much detail, I mean, there's no requirement to read it. Anyway, my second point was I had thought in the round table that there was considerable support for reducing the requisition and increasing the tipping fees. And I see in the projection through the years that that's not the case. Did I misunderstand our intent in that, or is there a possibility that that could be modified to increase our tipping fees a bit? I had understood that a $16 increase in tipping fees was equivalent to $1 million in requisition. And by slowly increasing tipping fees over a 5-year period, we could eliminate the requisition, which used to be the case.
So thanks, Director. I can try to start with that, and then other staff certainly weigh in. At the roundtable, I certainly understood there was an interest in focusing on the tipping fees and increasing those, and so that we did do over the summer and into the fall, and so we do have those new tipping fees in place for 2024. As well, the requisition it has held firm from what it was in 2023, and that's what's presented both in the proposed budget and today in the recommended budget. And indeed, in option 1, the requisition doesn't change going into future years. Option 2 does reflect that change to the requisition, as we've been talking about for the reserve contributions. I think the only last thing I would say on that is we are in the middle of the solid waste management plan review process right now, and so that bulk of work, the asset management work, the fiscal policy work, a lot of that is going to help inform the board going forward into the future around what some of its revenue requirements are, and what the right mix of in terms of tipping fees and requisition. But for today, the option 1 in front of the board, the recommendation certainly is to support the recommended financial plan with the $5 million requisition. Option 2, as we've been talking about, is to provide some gradual increases there to reflect reserve contributions.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. And then thanks, Director Wally. Glad we're able to reach you. And next we have online Director Chapman. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Director Wally. It was my understanding that we were pretty specific in saying that the requisition was a fallback amount of funding or source of funding. The desire of the board at that roundtable was that users who are using the facilities should be contributing the lion's share of the operating cost and contributions to reserves. Now, if we need to have another meeting to clarify that, then I think we should do that. And it would be timely since staff are working on all the policies and long-term planning for the function, that we should give more direction. It appears more direction is needed so that we're clear on what the board wants. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Chapman. And does staff want to respond to whether that clarity has already been provided, whether further clarity is needed on the direction there?
I don't know if I would add any more to what I previously said with respect to the roundtable, the change to the tipping fees. We're now in front of the board with the recommended financial plan, and option 1 is as presented. Option 2 is part of the staff report, and in light of conversations previously around the reserve contributions and reserve health, and then I would suggest before too much more consideration, the solid waste management plan review process does need to continue. That will be very informative for the board.
All right, thanks very much. And unless you had a follow-up, I'm going to go to Director Therrien in the room. And
Sure. I just wanted to clarify that my concerns are with the health of the reserves and being ready for that large expenditure in 2031. I'm not really, I'm very open to discuss whether that revenue comes from taxation or tipping fees. I just believe we're going to need to increase our revenues somehow so that we're ready, and what mix of taxation and tipping fees, I'm very open to discuss. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Director Terry, and first time speaker, Director Grieve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's not an either or kind of a scenario. I think that, you know, in a perfect world, you want to kind of balance your reserves with your borrowing, because that way the future generations that are going to be using the facility get their chance to pay for it as well. So it's going to be a bit of a balancing act. I think I'm all for saving stuff up in reserves right now. We actually make a little bit on our money right now, which wasn't the case 10 years ago. So I think really what we're trying to do here is a balancing act between the two, because it's not just the present users that are burdened with the debt. It's also the future generations, because they're going to be using cell number 3.
All right, so we're still on receipt, and we have another speaker, Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a question for staff, and what I'm wondering is what the timeline is for the solid waste management plan. I'm hearing that we're going to be able to have a more fulsome conversation about future requisition needs versus and balancing requisition versus tipping fees. And I'm wondering if this board is going to have an opportunity for that more like in-depth conversation prior to looking at the next year's budget.
Vivian, are you able to provide that snapshot of this always plan review and the timing around it?
Yes, thank you. The solid waste management plan, we have kicked off step 3, which is the options analysis at the end of December. So we worked through that with the RSWAC, which is the brainstorming of all options to get to the goals and the guiding principles that were already identified and approved through the board. So right now we are going to be meeting with the RSWAC committee in the coming months to work out what those options look like and all the financial pieces that are tied to the proposed programs. And then we'll provide a short list and bring that back to the board for consideration. The intention is to be able to do all the technical studies within the next 6 to 9 month window, so that we can have a fulsome, comprehensive report, understanding the full financial impact and the risk to the service based on what's going to be arising from the solid waste management plan analysis. And that is intended to be brought up to the board towards the end of this year, so that it can be brought to the public for full consultation in early 2025. So it will be done in time for the next year's budget cycle.
Thanks, Vivian. And the sort of our further work on clarifying what our tipping fees are likely to be, given that we had quite an excess, so a very positive thing, particularly on organics in 2023. So by that point, when that report is delivered in 6 to 9 months, we'll also have a much clearer sense on what our tipping fees are looking like. Once we have obviously 2023 was a partial year for the organics. Once we have sort of a full year at full steam under our belts. Okay, all right. Well, so I think it sounds like the information we're all looking for will be available before the next budget planning process. All right, so we're still on receipt. So maybe we'll just close that off. So anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, and there are 2 options. And Director McCollum.
I'd like to move option 1.
And that's been seconded by Director Kerr. I saw a light on for a second. I thought, Director Grieve, did you want to speak?
Thank you. I kind of misread the room there. I thought we were heading towards option 2. So thank you.
And is there anyone online who wants to speak? I don't see any hands. Otherwise, I'll go back to Director McCollum to speak.
Thanks. I'll just maybe give a brief explanation as to why I'm still in support of option 1. our contribution to reserve is higher than what was originally forecast. And the last 2 years, it's been over $2 million, just thanks to surplus, I believe is how we manage that. And just given that we're waiting on some policy work and that it's not, in my mind, something that urgently needs to be decided on at this particular junction, I'm quite comfortable with option one. And I think everyone on the board has expressed an interest in revisiting this and understanding exactly what direction we're moving on with tipping fees and whether or not the taxation needs to be adjusted for inflation as well. So I'm just happy to push off that conversation a little bit further when we have more information. And also just with the beginning of a new service and the organics, there's just a few things that are up in the air right now that can add a lot of variation into the financial plan. And so I think we're best just to stick with things as they are for the time being.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone online and no one in the room wanting to speak. So option one is on the table. So at this point, I'll call the question. And all those in favor of option one? Okay, and all right, and those opposed? Just confirming, are there any no votes online? Just taking a second to reconcile all of this. Okay, Lisa, you've recorded everything? Okay, and so that carries. All right, thanks everyone for that discussion. And next we'll move on to the Cortez Island Free Store funding request. I'll pass that over to staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Vivian Shaw will again introduce the staff report and will be available to answer any questions the board may have. So Vivian, over to you.
Thank you, James. Through the CEO to the chair and the CSWM board. Back in January, there was a resolution to direct staff to explore ways to contribute $1,500 towards the Cortez Island Free Store. I'm happy to report that based on an update from Director Von Esch earlier this week, it is confirmed that the community has found a way to raise the necessary funds to repair or to go ahead with the repair. However, through this analysis and exploring how a CSWM can fund free stores, rose a number of issues around the liability around this particular free store, as noted in the report. The free store was constructed by volunteers and is not likely built to code, and there are potential improvements and expansion that may require bringing the structure to code, which presents some challenges. In the report, it talks about, details the free stores that are currently operating in the area, that we have within the service area, each of which are independently run and funded separate from the CSWM service. That is, they're not currently under the CSWM mandate. With the exception of the Cortez Island Free Store, all the other free stores are either run through resident ratepayer associations, like those on Denman and Hornby, or by municipalities themselves, like the Village of Tassus and Village of Sayward. The Village of Gold River is listed on there, but and they did have a free store, but it's been closed since COVID. The building, again, was not in good condition, and it was the responsibility of the village to replace or repair, and as such, the village had made the decision to shut it down. The free store on Cortez is unique in the sense that it is the only one within the CSWM service area that doesn't fall under any organizational structure, as it was very much founded on a grassroots movement, which is great, but it has no liability insurance as we were going through this analysis. The free store is not under the direct supervision or direction of the CSWM, and the volunteers act as independent contractors. So right now, the free store concept is currently not under the CSWM mandate, which is being reviewed as part of the solid waste management plan. Sorry, I just wanted to note that. But under the contract with CSWM, the Cortez Island contractor operates a transfer station, but has no responsibility for the free store operation. And there's currently no formal arrangement or recognition of the free store as part of the operator's contract. So working with MIA, who is our insurance provider, they've confirmed that the free store is not insured by the CSWM, and the lack of formal structure does pose a challenge in terms of tax support, financial resources, and the overall coordination of any potential improvements or expansions. So in the report, separate from the funding request, staff is proposing that we work with the volunteers to set up a formal agreement to clarify that legal relationship between the store, the free store, and CSWM, outlining the responsibilities and terms and conditions, and also the insurance requirement. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I realize we don't actually have a motion for receipt on the table, so if we could just get one. Okay. Thanks very much, everyone. And I see.
Move receipt or second?
I think we're well covered on that. Thanks, everyone. The Director Morin, and then we'll go to Director Van Ash.
Great, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple comments. I appreciated this report because I think it addresses, Director Van Ash brought up, I think, an important point around the value of free stores. Of course, they're not covered under this board, but I think, grassroots initiatives are super important, particularly in more rural communities. And, we are trying to promote diversion and responsible practices in terms of our waste. So I think it's good that this was put on the radar, and I'm hoping that there is some way for some of the concerns or things to be worked out on Cortez. I am interested, obviously, to hear what Director Van Esch says, but whatever we can do to support these kind of initiatives, the better, I think. Not everything has to be have a very formal structure to be effective and valuable. And I just wanted to recognize that, and to recognize the folks on Cortez who are providing, who are volunteering and doing their part. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Director Morin, and we'll go to Director Van Ash.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for this report. Really appreciate it. It did seem to put a spur into the island that the rest of the funds were raised, and this new roof is covered. As I've stated before, this is a really important institution on Cortez. It's been operating for decades and decades, and certainly one wouldn't want this sort of inquiry to end up, shutting it down because of liability issues. And obviously, as a responsible board member with you all, I do want to make sure that we're doing things right, and that we are finding solutions that are making sure that we're making good decisions, and that this can continue in the spirit of how it has in the past. So I think it's important that we sort of wait until we get a report back on the resolution and progress around how we look at expanding and growing recycling and diversion practices and free store operations in the district. And in the meantime, as far as reporting back to the free store that there isn't a funding mechanism to support the roof, because this ask came from myself specifically, not the free store. The free store didn't approach the CSWM board for this funding. It was me sort of looking to see if there's an easy way for us to be able to provide some funding. I think I just request that I can pass this information on to them, that I made this request rather than you going back to them and letting them know that they need to figure out a way to fund it in a different way.
All right, thanks very much, Director Van Esch, and I see Director Chapman and then Director Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. I was just more interested in this report from the aspect of waste diversion. the least if we can reduce the amounts going in the landfill is going to last longer. So although it's you know, these small areas are doing these free stores, it is creating some diversion, which in the long run, I think is going to help us. So I was interested in the diversion aspect and not just simply the waste disposal. Thank you.
Excellent point. Yeah, certainly diversion saves all of our residents money. It's just the right way to be going. Alternate Director Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are along the same lines. I do hope to give a little context. The Village of Taxes Free Store is operated by a municipality, but the public workers do not have any idea of the volumes diverted. So that is something that could be kind of a needs improvement area. It is also sort of equivalent to a bus shelter. So people can drop things off or pick things up at any time of the day. There are no locks. The roof is somewhat half covering over items. And I had just received an email from some teachers in the school who are hoping to do some improvements on this structure, whether it's new paint or whatever. The point that I'm interested in making is I'm not sure if there is a director from Gold River, but I know that in the Gold River Free Store not being offered through the municipality, I have noticed that there is a thrift store that has opened there. So it has sort of went to the private market in order to address some of those diversionary needs, because when people move away, there does have some need to divert reusable items, and there's a lot of potential that can be utilized in measuring said diversion. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alternate Director Fowler. So we have receipt motion on the table. So perhaps we'll just dispense with that. Okay, sorry. Okay. But I think we already have receipt on the table, so I should actually ask the question. Anyone opposed to receipt? And that passes. And it's my understanding that the recommendations are at this point moved. So I think Director Van Esch, would you agree that the recommendations at this point are moot? This being your request, and then we can move on to the next item.
Yes, I would. Thank you, and look forward to the resolutions that we have around the store expansion throughout the district. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Okay, and which leads us quite fluidly to the resolution status report for receipt. Moved and seconded, Grant and Moran. Any discussion on the resolution status report? And seeing none online either. Okay. Any opposed to receipt? Okay. And we'll move on to bylaws and resolutions, and recommendation for bylaw number 814, Comox Strathcona Waste Management Illegal Dumping Resolution Bylaw. Moved by Grieve, seconded by Grant. Any discussion on this? Not seeing any. Any opposed? And that is adopted. All right, and at this point, I think we've gone through the agenda. We'll just take a motion for termination. And any opposed? All right, thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.